Hi everyone, welcome to the Q&A video. I hope to give you some helpful answers to the questions that you submitted around fitness and nutrition. So let's dive in. All right, the first question is, when is a good time to start adding weights to your workouts? You want to add weights to your workouts once you're moving mechanically sound at the current weight that you're at throughout the entire duration of your workouts, not when it feels easy to do so. You can always take weight off once you're in the workout, but never are you going to want to add weight. It's always going to feel hard when you're in the workout. So it's not very often that someone's in the middle of a workout thinking, gee, I should add weight to my bar. It's always going to feel difficult no matter how light the movement is. So that is something to keep in mind. We do workouts all the time at lighter loads. And even though it's at like a weight that's very much below our maximal loads, it's not even close to the weight that the more advanced athletes can lift, they're still very hard. So even if you're lifting a lot lighter than you actually can, it's never going to feel easy. You just over time will start to understand what's possible. So it's not really about how hard it feels. It's more like, could I do more weight? Could I do more reps at the weight that I currently have? And if that's the case, then you probably could add a little bit more weight. Sometimes it's worth just putting a little extra on. If you always use kind of the same weight for most workouts, just put on 5 pounds more, put on 10 pounds more, give it a try. And if your form is breaking down and you know that it's just too heavy, then that's fine. Take the weight off and maybe give it a go a little ways down the road. But there's a big difference between feeling like I can't do this and this is really hard. So if it means taking more breaks, focusing on your movement a little bit more, being a little bit more efficient and really thinking it through, then that's absolutely fine. Put a little more weight on, let it take a little bit longer. You might have to take a little bit more rest than you're used to, but that is absolutely okay. And that is how you're going to get to a point where you are lifting more weight and you're feeling more comfortable in doing that. And it's going to increase the intensity of your workouts by quite a bit. This is where it's important to keep track of your workouts on SugarWOD, to make notes, maybe even have a little workout book where you write down your workouts and the weights you use and any little tips that is going to help you when you look back, think, okay, like I did this workout at this weight. I made notes here that it actually wasn't too bad. Maybe I'm going to try a little bit heavier today, even though this workout's not quite exactly the same, but it still has the same movement with other stuff that's making me gassed. Anytime you're in doubt, ask your coaches. They can definitely help you. They can give you an idea of when you're warming up, just to say like, you should be able to do 10 reps, but like the 11th one should feel almost impossible. And that will just help you kind of figure out where you're supposed to be at. But like I said, put a little bit more on, see if you can maintain the mechanics of your movement. And if you can, then fight your way through it. And if you just feel like this is just too heavy for me at this point in my journey, then take the weight off and continue on and try it again another time. And just a rule of thumb, if you are never the last one to finish, that might be a cue for you to level up your weights a little bit, try a different skill to make that skill level a little bit harder. It's generally the people who are really pushing themselves that finish last. If you're always finishing before everyone else, then there is room there for you to make the workouts a little bit more challenging. That's going to push you a little bit more. Okay, the next question is, how many days in a row should one fitness before taking a rest day? What is ideal? So this is a question that is going to have an answer that just depends, and there's a whole lot of variables that are going to come into play. It's going to depend on what your goals are, how much you're eating, how much you're sleeping, what your outside stress levels are. And the better these are, the more training you'll be able to take on. There really isn't any such thing as overtraining, just mostly under recovering. If your goal is just to be active, healthy, live a good life, 3 days a week is a great place to be, and it's going to leave a whole lot of time for other things in your life. But if you have performance goals and you want to be super fit, then you're going to want to train probably 5 to 6 days a week. For most people who are just wanting to get in shape, I would say 4 days a week is really solid. 3 is great, and 5 is bonus. And when it comes to rest days, most people should be taking, I would say, 2 days off. 1 day can be somewhat of an active rest day if you want to go walking or maybe go do something fun like tobogganing or bike rides with your family. But then just take 1 day that's just a complete rest. And there are some people who have a hard time not overdoing the active rest day. Doing like a 5K run or 10K run is not an active rest day. So yeah, just be cautious of overdoing it when you're supposed to be resting. I would say an ideal training schedule doesn't exist. It maybe does for someone who has nothing else going on in life, but I know that's not applicable to anyone in this group. So it's going to depend on basically your schedule. I would first and foremost just make sure you're getting it in, even if it's not super ideal. Just try to get in your 3 days or your 4 days, whatever you're trying to do. If you do have the privilege of like really setting your schedule, then I would say if you have a performance goal, or you're like really chasing fitness, doing like 3 on, 1 off, and then 2 days on, 1 off, that's a pretty good schedule. And I think most people would find that their body feels really good keeping up with that. And then if you just have like a health and wellness goal, maybe doing 2 on, 1 off, that doesn't really work out in a 7-day week. So your days are going to change all the time. The other option you could do would be 1 on, 1 off, like every other day, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, maybe 1 day on the weekend. And then other people just find that going Monday to Friday is best for them and taking weekends off, having a good solid rest on the weekends. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And if you do find that by the 5th day you're really dragging, then throw in just a lighter day on Wednesday, Thursday. Even if you're attending classes like our group classes, we try to program a bit of a cardio day in there somewhere. But if it's not there, just take it upon yourself to just say, I'm just going light today. I'm going to go at 60% and I'm just here to move today. For those of you that are a little newer to exercise, it might sound counterintuitive for me to tell you that the more you come, the less sore you're actually going to be. But if you only work out like 1 to 2 days a week, you're going to find that the soreness is pretty extreme because you have so many days off. So I would try to keep rest days to 3 days in a row or less. If your schedule isn't too demanding, I'd say the best thing to do is really just listen to your body. If you find that you've been working out 3 days and you're just like, wow, I am just not feeling it. Even like soreness aside, sometimes you can just tell that you're just not ready to train and you just need a little bit extra recovery. Listen to your body. It's okay to take an extra day off even if you didn't plan on it. Sometimes that helps you progress farther in the long run and helps make it a lot more sustainable for you as well. I will say that there's many times that I get a little addicted to the workouts and I'm like, oh, just one more. And I'm there that day and I'm all excited to do it. And I'm in the workout and I'm just like, no, today was definitely a day for a rest and I can feel it. And I'm just not my best today. And I should have just taken the day off. Remember that the gym is not where the changes are made. It's where the stimulus comes from that causes the adaptation to happen while you rest. The gym should be about building and setting yourself up for the future and not about expending calories, because you have 23 other hours in a day that you can do that. So it's just a lot easier if your goal is fat loss or to manage your intake versus your expenditure. It's a lot easier to just eat 150 less calories a day than to spend like an additional hour working out. So please don't think of your exercise as just a means to burn calories. You do that throughout your day anyways. Exercise should be about creating a stimulus to cause an adaptation, to build and set yourself up for a very successful future with a metabolically sound body and a strong body, because we all know how important that is as we age. No matter how old you are, it's definitely something to be thinking about at whatever stage of life you're in. Okay, the next question is a good old myth. Is there a certain time that you should quit eating at night, or is this a myth? This is a myth. So the myth is that you will not be able to lose body fat or you will gain body fat if you eat past like 7 o'clock at night. So the body's going to manage its energy storage or body fat based off of the calories that it's getting over time, regardless what time you're eating it at. So there's no magic reset point at 7 p.m. There's no magic reset point even at midnight when the next day starts. It's just over time, how is the energy balance playing out? Like, it's kind of like this the whole time. It's not like, oh, we had a lot of food today, but like tomorrow's a new day. It's like, it's still up high and then it's going to have to like balance itself out. So with this 7 p.m. rule, the thing that it does do is that it makes people eat a little bit less throughout their days. So if you're taking out 4 hours of time that you usually do a lot of eating, then you're just simply going to eat less. And then the other thing is most people eat certain types of foods after 7 p.m. So not typically are we eating like salads and chicken breasts after 7. We're eating things out of the pantry that's super calorically dense, foods that are really easy to overconsume. The serving sizes are really small, so it's really easy to eat like 2 to 3 servings. And then also we're eating mindlessly at that time. So we're sitting there watching TV, throwing food in our mouths, not really thinking about how much we're eating. So if you take out that chunk of your day and don't allow yourself a chance or an opportunity to eat, then you're going to eat less without really thinking about it. So it's not a magic thing that like, oh, after 7 o'clock, if I eat, I'm going to gain weight. If you're managing your intake and you know that you still have a certain amount of food that you can eat in that day, but it's going to take place after 7 p.m., it doesn't mean your body's going to store that as body fat. There's no magic like mechanism that happens or something that shuts down that after 7 o'clock, your body's like, oh, it's 7. Everything that we consume now is going to go straight to body fat. It's always using and changing and storing, and the metabolism is very cool. It's not just like this happens and this happens. It's very fluent and always moving. So if you kind of have your entire intake under control, you know what you can consume in a day, it's not going to matter what time you have it at. And I can personally say that this is true because I haven't had a supper before 7 p.m. in quite a long time. We eat after 7 o'clock every single night, and the only thing that will change my weight is if I'm changing my intake. If I'm eating less, eating more, the time of day I eat simply doesn't matter. However, I will say sometimes eating late at night can disrupt your sleep, so that's something to play around with. If you do find that, then you might want to just kind of change around your eating schedule a little bit, so that's not a problem. And then also, you can weigh a little more immediately the next day if you had a big meal late at night, simply because the food is just undigested in you. Food contains a lot of water typically, and if it hasn't been very long since you've had that meal, the water and everything is still inside of you, and it takes time just to work that all through. So if you had your last meal at like 3 p.m., you're going to be really quite light the next day. If you had your last meal at like 10 p.m. and it was like an actual like decent sized meal, then you're going to weigh a little bit more the next day. But that doesn't mean you've gained body fat or anything. It's just you just simply have more weight in you that will work itself out over time. Okay, moving on. Next question. The only fizz I ever crave is Coke Zero. Should I be cautious with this, or is it okay to indulge every now and then? So the way this question is worded, I would say this is totally fine to indulge every now and then. This doesn't sound like it's something that's happening all the time. If you are drinking diet pops every day or several a day, then maybe that's something that you don't want to be doing. It's always going to come down to everything in moderation. So if it's just something once in a while that you're just craving it and you want to go have one, absolutely, I wouldn't honestly worry about it at all. There's quite a lot of mixed information on artificial sweeteners, and I think there's just a lot of unknown about it. So if it's something that you're just not having that often, I wouldn't worry about it a whole lot. Sometimes it just works to, just give you that little fix and you enjoy it and you move on. But if it's something that you're having all the time, I would say maybe start looking into phasing that out or finding alternatives to help with that. Also, even if it is something you're having just once in a while and you haven't tried some of the unsweetened drinks or the other options, there are other options out there. One being Zevia, which is sweetened with stevia. So that could be maybe something that's slightly better than the Coke Zero. And then all the flavored carbonated waters. So these are something that maybe doesn't sound that good, but once you get onto them, they're actually really, really good. We drink them all the time. They are just simply bubbly water with like a light flavoring. They're not sweetened, artificially sweetened or anything. It's just a little bit of flavor and it's very slight. So like the bubbly the bubbly brand, Perrier, there's a whole bunch, just plain club soda. And then if you don't want to buy a bunch of cans all the time, look into getting a soda stream at home. We just bought one of those over the holidays and we're quite enjoying just being able to just carbonate our own water. And you can buy like the little bubbly flavorings and flavor your own water. You can even play around with just like different things in that. So those are all options that maybe will help kind of cure that fizz little craving that you have, but just be a slightly better option. And then she also asked, what is the nutritional value of pork? So I'm just going to answer this one super quickly. I'm not sure really where this comes from. I've never heard someone say that there is no nutritional value in pork. So I'm just not sure where this comes from. But all meat sources that are literally meat from a living animal is going to be protein. So that macronutrient is going to be there. You can't have meat without protein, doesn't exist. All food contains macronutrients, and if it doesn't contain a macronutrient, it's probably not really like a food. The food has to contain macros. So like water doesn't, but like literally everything else has to contain some sort of a macronutrient. So that alone, protein is a macro. But then also in pork, like there's many other different vitamins and minerals. So like there's B vitamins and there's a little bit of iron and all those things. So pork is definitely a good option. It depends on the cut of meat, but lots of times it's actually a fairly lean option as long as you're not eating like ribs or bacon. But pork is definitely a good food to eat. Next up, we have a question about suggestions for how to stay motivated to get outside when the weather can be crappy. So the weather can be super tough for us Canadians, as we all know. The winters can be really tough because the days are so short, it's so dark. Sometimes it's so cold you just can't go outside, or it's so windy, or even freezing rain kind of makes it treacherous so you can't even get outside and do the things that you maybe would have done. I find that I try to find like the good things in the winter. So on those days where it's like -40 and it's so cold, you can't even think about going outside. It's always very sunny and always very bright. So I try to just really appreciate that low, super bright sun in the winter, and just try to find something inside that's nice and warm and cozy, that kind of makes me feel like I'm still doing the same kind of things, just maybe not in the same setting. So she mentioned that going for a walk is just a really big part of her day. So that tells me that that is time that's slotted out in her day. It happens all the time, and that time could easily be filled with something else. It's an activity that she's going to enjoy. That's something that's going to feel like it's moving her towards the goal that she has for herself. So if the weather's bad, then you have a plan B. It's like the whole thing I always say to my clients, if this happens, then what? It's good to have these lists where you know that these things are going to happen. We can't just pretend like, I hope the weather's just never bad, and then if it is, I'll just have no plan of figuring out what to do instead. Rather, you have lists where you're like, if the weather's bad, this is what I'm going to do instead. So just a couple ideas I had. You could go do a drop-in at a gym. Go use their cardio machines. Walk on the treadmill. Use their elliptical. Use something that you've never used before. Kind of a good opportunity just to get out and try something new. If you had the funds, you could get something at home. Maybe it's not something you love doing every day. I know walking on a treadmill in your living room is not like the best experience, especially if it's like for like mental health as well. But it can be all right. You can put in some headphones, listen to an audiobook or whatever, and still enjoy that, especially if you can park it by a window and see that nice winter sun. So yeah, getting some sort of cardio machine that you can use at home. It doesn't have to be top of the line. It doesn't have to be amazing. Just look on the Facebook Marketplace. Maybe there's just some little piece of machinery that someone's getting rid of for a good price that's going to work. You could use that time to maybe do some stretching that you don't normally do, or you could pull up a YouTube video with some yoga that you'll enjoy. Yin yoga is really nice, slow paced, and really good for just stretching the body out. You could use that time to call a loved one, have a conversation with just someone you haven't talked to in a while, someone you enjoy chatting with. You could clean out a room if there's maybe something in your house that's causing a little bit of anxiety or something you've been putting off for a while. Maybe just tackle that. Clean out a drawer, clean out a closet. Maybe start on your house cleaning, so then that's less you have to do later when maybe you don't want to. Or use that time to get ahead on your freezer meal prep, which is never a bad idea. So yeah, the time definitely doesn't have to be lost. It can be something that you replace with something else, something that also brings a little bit of joy. And if you really just love getting outside, My best advice would just be get the best gear you can and just try to stay warm. Maybe get some of those spiky things you put on your shoes so you don't slip, so you can still get out and enjoy the walks or whatever you do in the winter. Then I also wanted to just take this question as an opportunity to talk about the things that are worth doing in life are often things that take actions that aren't really that enjoyable. So things like getting a degree to get a great job, or working really hard in your business to make your business successful, or having really hard conversations to have a really good relationship. Those things aren't really fun to do the steps that get you there, but it's always very worth it. All the things that are really rewarding in life usually take a lot of steps that aren't a lot of fun to actually get there. So that's something I really use a lot to reframe. Instead of thinking like, this isn't fun right now, this isn't enjoyable, I don't want to go for this walk, I don't want to do my workout. It's like, that's okay, because that's not meant to be fun. What is enjoyable and what's fun is the end result that results from it. So if instead of thinking like this sucks, it's like, this thing that I'm doing is moving me towards something that's really great. And I find that really helps to reframe those little moments when you're just not feeling like doing the things. Like there's many times where I just don't feel like working out, but it's okay. I don't need to feel like I want to work out all the time. I still just make it happen because I understand that this is the thing I need to do to get the result that I want. And it's like that with like really anything in life. I encourage everyone watching this video, just think about all the things that you're really, really thankful for in your life, things you really enjoy, things that just feel really amazing to you, and think how easy it was for you to achieve those things. Even having like kids, like they're a lot of work, but it's obviously something very worth it. So I encourage you to think of those things and reframe that mindset. Okay, we have a little change of scenery. I was fortunate enough to get stuck in town in that freezing rain last night. Took the opportunity to film some of that Q&A video. So we are continuing on, a couple more questions. I'm going to try to keep this video from being too long, so I probably am not going to get to all of them. However, some of these questions I do want to just do in a written text post, and some of them will be answered really well in that form, but the ones that are better done on video, I'm going to tackle here. So the next question is there such thing as being fat or overweight and healthy? She goes on to say that she weighs more than she has ever in the past, but also feels healthier than she ever has in the past. So I want to start by saying that health does not have a certain size, and it does look different on every single person. There are some people that we might see walking down the street, or even like the Instagram Fitspo people or fitness models, and look at them and think, wow, like they must be so healthy. But honestly, some of those people are some of the most unhealthy people. So you really can't judge a person by the outside. Just because someone is very lean and has muscle and doesn't have a lot of body fat does not necessarily mean that they're healthier than someone who has a higher level of body fat but has really clean bill of health. Healthy blood markers, like a healthy menstrual cycle, good mood, able to sleep through the night, stress levels under control, all that stuff. So there is no absolute picture of health. And I do think we live in a world where the fitness models and like those type people are made out to portray what health looks like, but that's not necessarily health. That's just in this current trendy time, what an attractive physique, I guess, for the general masses would look like. And also keep in mind that that's very trendy over time. What was really attractive in the 50s was different than the 60s, different than the 80s, different than the 2000s, different than the 2020s. So please don't look at a body and think, oh my God, that's what health is. It's often a trend on what the industry is portraying to be desirable. And that is not the same thing as health. Adipose tissue or body fat on our bodies is simply just an energy storage system. It's a really great storage system to help us survive if food ever does become short. However, the trouble is nowadays there's never a shortage of food, so it tends to override our old systems and it just gets a little bit in a surplus sometimes, in an excess. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to carry more body fat. I think it's more so important to focus on the habits that got someone to that place. That's usually more problematic than the body fat itself, as long as it's not an extreme excess that is causing a lot of problems with like actual blood panels and that kind of thing, or affecting quality of life. So it's not necessarily the body fat that we need to worry about so much, it's so much the habits and all the things that got us there. So were we consuming highly processed foods that were just very easy to overconsume and maybe cause a little bit of damage in our gut and just other problems like that? Were we consuming high levels of sugar and carbohydrate, which resulted in chronic levels of insulin, or chronic levels of elevated insulin? Were we very sedentary? How much activity were we doing? So those are the things that are more important to focus on than my body fat levels. That is kind of like the outcome of what we were doing. So we don't need to worry about the outcome. We more so need to worry about the processes. And there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't improve your health without changing your body fat levels at all. You can make a ton of changes, make a ton of improvements in your physical health and your mental health and the whole wellness spectrum without changing your body fat percentage at all, and certainly without changing your weight. I have a couple of diagrams here that I just drew up that I will go over in a second, but make sure we're not just focusing on weight, especially if you're a novice lifter. You are definitely going to be building lean mass at the same time you are losing body fat, and you might stay the same weight or you might actually gain a little bit of weight. Just ask any of our members who started out leaner when they started with us like 9 years ago. They might tell you that they're like 10, 20 pounds heavier than they were back then, but they look better, they have less body fat, they have more muscle definition, because the weight on the scale really doesn't tell a very telling story when it comes to someone who goes from doing no weightlifting to doing like something like CrossFit that's fairly intense. It builds strong bones, it builds lean connective tissue, as well as muscle. Okay, here's the one chart I was referring to. There is another one over here that I'm going to just do in a completely separate video. So when we're talking about weight, it's very different than body fat. So as I said, we've had many members who've trained for quite a while. They are heavier than they once were, but they look better than they ever have. So this just kind of shows like this is time and this is pounds weight. So over time, your fat mass is going to slowly decrease while your lean mass slowly increases, but the average weight is going to stay the same. And if you ever hear someone talk about body recomposition, this is what they're referring to. So there might not be a change in your scale weight, but there is a change in the composition of your body, meaning how much fat you have and how much lean mass you have. So your weight can stay the same, but your body can drastically change. So if you're someone who does have a health goal and maybe you want to lose a little bit of body fat, but it's not your focus right now, it's something you actually don't want to focus on right now, you're in a place where you're like, what I'm doing is not working for me. I need to do like a lifestyle overhaul here, and I just want to get healthy for myself. So you might find that by changing habits without restricting your intake, and habits, I mean like the stuff we're working on in this challenge, like eating more vegetables, eating more protein, eating more whole foods, moving away from processed foods, that kind of thing. You might find that by focusing on those without also having the addition of a calorie restriction or restricting intake, that you find it a lot easier. It's when you combine it all at once is when it almost feels a little overwhelming. It's like, okay, I need to completely overhaul my diet. I'm hungry, I'm craving these foods, I can't have anything to like fill it. That's when it kind of gets overwhelming for people. So if your goal is not fat loss, or maybe it is down the road, but you're willing to not focus on it right now, and you have big changes to make in your just lifestyle choices and food choices, focus on the things we're talking about here and don't restrict your intake. Listen to your body. These whole foods and the higher protein and the more vegetables, the whole point of it is to regulate your natural hunger cues in your body that are there to regulate your eating. We aren't meant to chronically overeat. We're meant to be able to store food when we need to and be able to call on that energy when we need to. But we're not designed to always be eating more and more weight. If we were left to our own devices and we didn't have all the technology and things and comfortable living that we have, that would be very difficult to survive. Allow yourself to listen to your body. Focus on the stuff we're doing. Eat those vegetables. Have lots of protein. Don't limit the protein. Let yourself eat as much as you want. If you have a big meal and you're like, I am still hungry, then go have more protein. Have some more vegetables. Have some more whole food carbs. Like if you have sweet potatoes or whole potatoes or rice or quinoa, anything, go have more of it. Don't restrict yourself. And I think you'll find over time that your body will regulate itself and you will no longer be in this state of like feeling like you're always holding yourself back. Because I'll talk about this later in one of the videos I have coming down the road, but that is a thing that your body does when you're always restricting intake a little bit. Your body's fighting you. It's trying to tell you like, you need to go find some food because we are hungry, and it's going to do all the things that it possibly can to make you have food cravings and make you have no control when your processed like delicious foods do show up. So by doing the things that we're suggesting but not being in a restrictive state is going to help you move into those habits that you're like, oh, like I actually really quite enjoy this food, especially like I don't even crave the other food because you're fully fed and you're fully satisfied. It's when you're restricted is when it's really hard to stick to things. And I do know a lot of people listening to this probably do have fat loss goals, but do try to think of this as like you have a lot of time. Time is on our side, and you don't have to do it all right now. Think of this like a long journey. So maybe in this challenge, you don't worry about losing weight. You just, if you don't have great relationship with food, or you don't have the skills and knowledge on how to put like great meals together, just focus on that and take the restrictive part out of it. Just let yourself eat these whole foods. Let yourself feel what actual fullness feels like, what it actually feels like to be satisfied. And I know I keep saying whole foods, and the next question is about that, but I'm saying that because those foods are meant to send our body the proper cues. Like if I say just eat ice cream and brownies until you're full, that system's going to be overridden and you're going to way overconsume. But if you're just eating vegetables and whole potatoes are a great carb source because they have water in them still. So it's really hard to eat any foods that are still the way they were as a whole plant, because there's still all that water in there, and it actually fills you up and makes you feel full and satisfied. Versus having the processed foods that still have all those calories, but our hunger cues just aren't being shut off because we're not used to that. So if you think about this in the sense of like evolution, there really isn't a lot of carbs in nature. There was fruit. Fruit has changed a ton just by breeding fruits to just be so much more delicious and flavorful. But when you look in the wild, fruit wasn't the way it was. I mean, look at a watermelon. It used to have like the rind was that thick. The fruit was like this big in the middle and it was full of seeds. Now it's like teeny little rind on the outside, just super sweet on the inside and no seeds at all. So our food has really changed over time. But yeah, think about in nature, where do you find carbs? Like all the food that was available to us in nature was plant matter. To eat a whole lot of seeds, like flour is made from the seed, obviously. You're gonna have to find a whole lot of seeds, mill it into flour, be able to have all the things to bake it into the things. So if you think about it from that perspective, that how our bodies were designed to regulate our intake, it wasn't designed around the foods that we're currently eating. So keep that in mind. And anyways, that's a long-winded explanation on why you should eat potatoes. But the more you eat the foods that are as they come from earth, the more closer you're going to be to the way your body is kind of designed. So sometimes just switching the focus away from your weight away from your size and just towards your health, then sometimes your body will kind of take care of that on its own. Your focus will be on wellness, and you'll see other things beyond the scale, the weight on the scale improving. And you might just like kind of get into a flow and be like, I just really like what I'm eating. I'm not really even thinking about it. And your body just might start taking care of a little bit of the excess body fat that it has kicking around. And if it doesn't, whatever. The goal is to focus on the stuff that really does matter. Like how you feel, your energy, your mood, your sleep, your cardiovascular endurance, like getting your blood work checked and making sure all of those markers are within a healthy range and not pushing the ranges of average, and just how your overall well-being is feeling. I think it's really just hammered into our heads about weight and size, and this is why we work out and this is why we eat healthy. It's always just to change our bodies to get fit. And for some people, that is the goal. That is fine. Everyone's different, but that doesn't need to be everyone's goal by any means. There's so much more to be enjoyed in life than just having an ideal body type. If you feel like you're in a good place and you feel like your health is improving, even though your weight isn't, just kind of ride out this part of the journey. Honestly, just enjoy it. Focus on what does matter to you and just enjoy the journey about learning how to fuel your body and just getting fit and strong. Focus on those non-scale victories. Focus on how good your workouts feel, the faster times you're doing, the more weight you're adding to the bar, the more you even enjoy working out. Maybe it's been like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, 6 months, a year, who knows, that you've stuck with a workout program that you've never done before. That's amazing. Focus on that. The scale is such a small part of the story. Honestly, it never tells the full story either. There's so many reasons why scale weight is just really not that great of a measurement. However, it's always the one that everyone falls back on and tends to put the most feelings into. But if this is a problem, honestly, I would just get rid of the scale, take some pictures, have them as like a little benchmark, check in every 1 to 2 months, see how it's going, take measurements every few weeks if you want to, just a couple, waist and hips, whatever. That will tell you more so how things are going than your weight, especially when things are going the right way and the scale is telling you misinformation. Because honestly, none of us really care how much we weigh. All of us just want to look good, feel good, and perform good, whether that means in the gym or in life. The next question is pretty relatable to this last one I just touched on. So, how do you keep motivated when you aren't seeing the changes you hope to see? So, I'm not going to reiterate everything I just said, but I think this goes very much hand in hand and it's all the same thing. I think you're maybe just focusing on the wrong thing. It depends what your goal is. If your goal is truly to see your weight go down or see fat loss, then just know that you are in control of that. It really isn't this mysterious thing of like, I'm not sure how I can do that. Like, it's just really hard for me. All these things, like fat loss truly is a science and it is really quite simple. It is definitely not easy. There's a lot of psychological stuff that goes into it and social things that make it difficult. But it is really quite simple. If that was the goal, then there are absolutely things that we can do to move you towards there. But I think for a lot of people, that actually isn't the goal. It's just the thing that we always think should be the goal. So focus on the stuff that matters. Like I said, how has your sleep been? How has your mood been? Are you excited to go to the gym? Are you excited to wake up in the morning? Are you enjoying learning how to cook new foods or learning how to put new meals together? Are you enjoying meeting a new community? Like, there is so much more to what we're doing here than just what your relationship to gravity is doing. Honestly, it's just, I know it's a thing that like we always put a lot of emphasis on. And like I said, it's totally fine to have that as a goal if anyone does, but there are so many other things to focus on to make the journey so much more fun. And if you focus on the things that really matter, then that could actually be a side effect that happens when you're not really paying attention. If you're always focusing on the weight and you're just like, my weight, it's not changing. I'm stepping on the scale and it's just not changing. And then you get emotional about it and then you get upset and then eat something that's moving you away from that goal anyway, rather than going that route and just being miserable and annoyed with it the whole time, the things that we're doing in this challenge are going to change that once we have all the pieces together. So if you can just think of it as a journey, know that time is on your side, know that there is a scientific way of like changing this, if that really is your goal, then good. But I really encourage everyone to focus on the other stuff that makes the trip just a whole lot more fun. Focus on your workouts, focus on pushing yourself harder, focus on adding a little bit of weight to your bar, focus on being consistent with your workouts, all those things. It makes this journey so much more fun. I can't even imagine if I, for the last however many years, was just doing it just to change the way my body looked. I just don't think it would have, it wouldn't have been quite the experience. And to be honest, it's been just an absolute amazing experience. Okay, I think this is going to be the last question that I answered to this Q&A because I know it's already getting a little bit long. There definitely are other really great questions. Some of them I'm going to answer in Slack, and I'm just going to do either a post or video just specifically about that and just post it right there. Some of the other ones were about macros, which next week's video topic is all about macros. So if you asked about how to figure out how much you should be eating and you're just not sure what your intake should be, and you hear people talking about macros and you don't know what they're talking about, next week's video is going to cover all that. So I hope I covered most of your questions. Anything that wasn't answered, I hope will be answered in some other format, just not in this video. So the last question is a nice simple one. Tips for hand care when starting or coming back to class, from calluses, rips to just building strength for on the rig or barbell. I'd love any advice or pointers for taking care of my paws. Okay, so this question's for those who do CrossFit or lift weights. Our hands get a little marked up sometimes because we just do a lot of hanging from the bar, a lot of barbell work and all that. So if you can see, these calluses here is what she's referring to. If you find that these rip on you, you need to do hand care. So I think I'm a good one to answer this question because I hate hand rips more than anyone. When I see people post them on Instagram, I'm just like, no, that's not what CrossFit is. It's not about slicing your hands up. So if you get bumps in your hands, you need to take care of them. I've tried many things. This is the absolute best tool you can use. So it's just a Mach 3 and it will not cut your hands. I'm just going to show you, I'm just going to push really hard against it and it's just going to take layer by layer off. So I just go along doing that. And I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of like shiny. So it just gets flatter and flatter and flatter, and it just takes the callus right off, so there's just nothing to rip. I would do that often, I don't know, every couple of weeks kind of thing. The bigger they get, the more it's going to bunch up, and then the easier it is to rip. So that's the main thing. Some people use a file. I find that really hurts, and it doesn't get rid of it like this. Like this, I can do my whole hand in a minute and it's just done and I don't ever rip. The other thing is using too much chalk. So if you chalk your entire palm, the chalk makes it grippy. So if you're sliding with the chalk on your hand, it's pulling your skin and it's going to rip more easily. So what I do is I only chalk my fingertips and then I let my palm slide so there isn't a lot of resistance there. And I just make sure my fingertips are nice and chalked so I actually have a good grip. And then the other thing would be the way you hold a bar. So here's me my pen. If you hold it like this, like the pull-up bar, all this skin here is getting pushed up and it's gonna put all that pressure right there. In gymnastics, instead of holding like this, you actually wanna get your palm more on top of a bar, and then there's gonna be a lot more pressure on the top of your hand. It's not all gonna pull onto your calluses on the top. So instead of being here, just get that hand more on top of the bar and that will help a little bit. And then lastly, if you get some grips, so I don't know, you'll probably see them in the gym. They're Velcro strap, they're just a piece of leather. You don't have to put your fingers in the holes, you just have it over your palm. Once you grab onto the bar, it will just be right there. These take some breaking in and getting used to. So if you get a pair and you're like, oh my God, I can't even hang on to the bar, these are the worst things ever. Just keep using it a little bit in each workout and just break them in. Once they're broken in, then they're really helpful. So if you watch any of like top level games athletes, they'll always wear them in like every workout that have pull-ups and stuff. You can get those online. I know the ones that these Fistfly have at Synergy Strength in Saskatoon, the Victory Grips, I think they're some of the best ones you can get. So those will really help protect your paws. But yeah, hand care, don't over chalk, grip properly, and then grips. And then lastly, I would put money on this, that most people rip their hands on the last round or the last 3 to 5 reps of the workout. So if you get really lazy and sloppy and you just fall to the bottom, there's just all this pressure on your skin getting pulled. So keep control. And I always think I can tell when I'm losing my grip. I'll either hop down and rest and kind of reset and get back up, or I just think like I have more reps left than I truly do. Because when it's that last one, you kind of just drop and do a floppy, crappy rep knowing it's your last one, and that's usually when you rip. So just have in your head, like, I have a whole nother round to do, or I have another 10 reps to do. And honestly, it's a stupid thing because you know you're lying to yourself, but it really does help. Okay, so thank you for sitting tight with me. Thanks for listening to this video. If you have any questions, still feel free to reach out to us. Use the group, post questions, because a lot of people have the same curiosities as you do. So keep the group chat going, and I'll keep checking it. I'll try to answer, give my little bits of information wherever I can. Make sure you're keeping up on the threads and stuff, because that's where a lot of the little nuggets will be found. Anything that I see is like a really good thread, I will maybe just catch it and then repost it just so nobody misses it. So anyways, keep crushing the challenge, guys. I'm having an awesome time, and I hope you guys are too.